Aisha?
Asia,
Asia?
like
Okay,
the
I was
continent.
off. Yeah. My bad. My bad.
It's okay. It's okay. It
Hello.
happens all the time.
We are live now with a new cohort member. I do remember you're in Arizona.
I am in Arizona.
This is Asia. You if you guys tuned into the Sunday, what did I call that? The
Reading sprint.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yep.
I logged in to make sure y'all were logged on, and then I logged up and went back to sleep. I did.
That is
I was
a-okay.
and we mistakenly streamed to my YouTube channel as well. But it's all good. We are here today with Aisha, who is a new cohort member out of Arizona, and we are discussing our exploration track read, which is a really good read. We're just taking an extensively long time to get through it because my life is my life, with a 6 month old. Well, he'll be 7 months.
I mean, she has a baby.
Yeah, yeah. In grad school with the baby
Oh,
is wild.
ooh,
And I am, my bones is tired, but we here, and
that's
we are
okay.
discussing one of my favorite essays by Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham, African American Women's History and the Metalanguage of Race. Because there's so many questions about like how if I want to learn more about Black women's history, how do I do that? How do I learn more about Black women? And the point of doing this reading is that you have to learn about the theory of how to read about us because we do not exist in the archives. We are not named, rather. Not that we don't exist, but we're not named in the archives. And this is why we read Hortense Spillers and we've read Sadia Hartman and we are now doing Higginbotham because that connection kind of gives you the framework to go out and whatever you want to learn about Black women, you can go out and discover it. Understanding that oftentimes we are not properly named in the record. Okay. Anywho, the section we're doing today is the racial construction of class. So, overall, this piece is about the meta language of race, how no language is neutral, the social dynamics and the power dynamic that language creates. And this is probably one of the most accessible pieces out of everything that we've read. This is the most accessible text. But we are on the section about class where Higginbotham is breaking down how uh, the meta language of race is also at the foundation of how we understand class and how we analyze class. So I like to start off when we do these discussions on academic text. It's the first paragraph, the paragraph I want to read. Yeah, just to get our brains juvenated. Let's read. Okay,
Let's
we're
do
gonna
it.
read. It's on page 17 of the syllabus. If you have the actual article on your own, it's 258 at the very bottom. We're just gonna read the first paragraph. I'll read it. Henry Louis Gates argues that race has become a trope of ultimate irreducible difference between cultures, linguistic groups, or adherents of specific belief systems, which, more often than not, also have fundamentally opposed economic interests. It is interesting that the power of race as a metalanguage that transcends and masks real differences lies in the remarkable and long-standing success with which it unites whites of disparate economic positions against blacks. Until the civil rights era of the 1960s, race effectively served as a metaphor for class, albeit a metaphor rife with complications. For example, not all Southern whites were slave owners, nor did they share the same economic and political interests. Upcountry Yeomen, that word always throws me, protested the predominance of planters' interests over their own in state legislatures, and white artisans decried competition from the use of slave labor. Yet, while Southern whites hardly constituted a homogeneous class, they united for radically different reasons around the banner of white supremacy, waged civil war, and for generations bemoaned the lost cause. Barbara Fields is referenced in this Ideology and Race in American History. If you ever really want your head blown off about race, read Barbara Fields. Yeah. I feel like that is a very surmised introduction.
Yeah, this feels very appropriate, particularly for this part. Because I think when we talk about class, we have a tendency to forget like where that class dynamic really came from, right? We think about the modern like structure of class and the way that we define like lower class and middle class and upper class or high class or elite, however you want to call them. But a lot of it really is in that systemic formation of difference, when we were systemic difference. Oh my gosh, my brain is hurting. Systemic difference from slavery and things like that. So
Yeah.
like,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was thinking there's a book I have on my bookshelf, Making Whiteness. The It's about the modernity of Jim Crow and shaping whiteness, essentially. It's by a white woman, actually, historian. And this section at Higginbotham is a historian. There's like one little paragraph in this section kind of this reminds me of a full landscape of work that really supports the argument that Higginbotham is making about class being race kind of under being the foundation of how we understand class. And when she's talking, I'm mispronouncing Yeoman, which is just the everyday worker, the agricultural guy in North Carolina has a particular history around this. There used to be a newspaper. I want to say it's like the Populist Farmer was what it was called. I took this class like 3 semesters ago. But in kind of, you look at every state, right? Like the landowners and the slave owners were very wealthy, like sort of the big corporations, and you have the farmers and the agricultural people whose interests aren't really aligned with the big business guy. But this idea of whiteness and, what's that white man name? Van Woodward, talking about that the idea that white supremacy isn't that all whites are supreme, it's about which whites can become supreme. Right. And getting white people across the board to buy into this cultural currency that said that they at some point could aspire to greatness via their whiteness if they just band together against the black man.
Ooh.
Wow. There's a lot of history, plenty of history books, and Barbara Fields actually came up under C. Van Woodward. Plenty of history around this idea about the modernity of Jim Crow being the making of whiteness. And that's how we come to understand class. Even now, we live in a society where we don't have a class analysis for African Americans in particular. Oftentimes, what we understand as class is wealth aesthetics.
Yeah.
What are those wealth aesthetics based on? Proximity to whiteness.
Yep. And I mentioned that in some of my notes coming on the upcoming pages. When we look at page 20, and how Higginbotham is talking about, like, at the very bottom, this trope of lady, and this trope of lady, and like the idea that presenting yourself a certain way and just having that kind of access to luxury is almost inextricably related to like the proximity to whiteness, and how certain Black women, even regardless of their race and class, don't have that access. And it just begs the question of, can Black women, can Black people even have that access in general, right? What does it mean to be luxury? What does it mean to be wealthy to Black people?
Like, we discussed gender previously with CJ. We did that, maybe it's been a month already. I have a really spicy take. That's why I take such umbrage with so much of the social media discourse that's targeted at Black women in America around dating, around family, and this idea that we have to sand ourselves down to fit into a very binary understanding of womanhood. And I try not to do the high level theoretical take, but my high level theoretical take is that en masse Black women will never be seen as women. We will never fit that box. And trying to shapeshift into that box is such a waste of our time because that
Right.
box is built literally on our labor. So if we remove ourselves from that labor, that box falls apart. And then like it just, there's so much theory that goes into the way I think about particularly gender, that I try not to, beat people over the head with it, but it always comes up.
Yeah, I think it's hard to separate gender from these things, right? Because they're such intersecting identities and they have such a tendency to overlap with each other that looking at them in isolation almost will unironically just bring it back up. Um, on that point of like femininity and like the conversation about femininity.
Yeah, because class, I think it's interesting that Higginbotham correlates. I mean, obviously, this whole piece is about the African American women as we exist in the in the archives, and how
Yeah.
historians should go about considering African American women as historical subjects. So obviously, she is going to keep looping everything back to gender, but it is very interesting the way she integrates gender with race and class. Angela Davis. Yeah. Okay, but to reference the syllabus, let's look at the question on page 44 of the syllabus. Would you like to
Yes.
read it?
Yes. Would you like me to read the part in bold as well?
Yeah, give everybody the
Uh,
context.
Awesome. All right. So, since Higginbotham's publication, Black feminist historians' 20th century history have incorporated this idea to demonstrate how Black women have historically been left out of the Western definition of woman. As Higginbotham posits, through an exploration of the word lady, womanhood was tied up in the interplay of the race class conflation with gender, and therefore no Black woman, regardless of income, education, refinement, or character, could enjoy the refined status of lady. Questions are: how does this parallel current conversations around femininity, luxury, and living a soft life, or the rejection of labor, stress, and struggle for Black women? How have you seen the conflation of race and class employed? With regards to Black women, how has race class conflation obscured certain subsets within the community, and what impact does that have on the definition of gender and womanhood?
I forgot I wrote the syllabus. This is definitely me. Yeah, because I thought again the commentary that you pulled out on Lady. Let's read that paragraph. If we go to page
Yeah.
259, page 18 in the syllabus, 259 in the article, we're gonna start at, well, that's it. I think maybe we'll just try to read as much of this section as possible.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to like how much about the lady part. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, we'll start on the actual first paragraph of the page. It starts with the meta language of race also transcended the voice of class and ethnic conflict among northern whites. Okay, do I want to read that part now? We want to get to the lady part. Okay, we're going to skip that paragraph because it just reaffirms the part we already discussed. So the interplay of the race class conflation with gender evoked very different social perceptions of Black and white women's work roles. This is exhibited by the concern about female loaferism, which arose in the years immediately following emancipation. Jacqueline Jones vividly exposes the ridicule and hostility meted out to Black families who attempted to remove their wives and mothers from the workforce to attend to their own households. In contrast to the domestic ideal for white women of all classes, the larger society deemed it unnatural, in fact, an evil for Black married women to play the lady while their husbands supported them. In the immediate post-war South, the role of menial worker outside their homes was demanded of Black women, even at the cost of physical coercion. Ooh, 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 ooh. Dolores Janet, yeah, that lady's last name, calls attention to the racialized meaning of class in her study of women's employment in a North Carolina tobacco factory during the 20th century. That would be the 1900s. She follows that race fractured the division of labor by gender. Southern etiquette demanded protection of white women's racial honor and required that they work under conditions described as suitable for ladies. In contradiction, in contradistinction to the drudgery and dirty working conditions considered acceptable for Black women. Uh, Dolores J. notes that at least one employer felt no inhibition against publicly admitting his brute treatment of Black female employees. The most effective tool in the discursive welding of race and class proved to be the segregation in its proved to be segregation in its myriad institutional and customary forms. Jim Crow railroads, cars, for instance, became strategic sites of contestation over the conflated meaning of class and race. Blacks who could afford first class accommodations vehemently protested the racial bias for being denied access to them. This is dramatically evident in the case of Arthur Mitchell, Democratic congressman to the U.S. House of Representatives from Illinois during the 1930s. Mitchell was evicted from first class railroad accommodations while traveling through Hot Springs, Arkansas. Despite his protest, he was forced to join his social inferiors in a Jim Crow coach with no flush toilet, wash basin, running water, or soap. I'm actually going to skip the quote and go to the next paragraph at the top of 261 and 20 for the syllabus. Ooh, what is that? Neither the imprimatur.
I think imprimatur.
I'm pretty sure in on my PDF I have it circled. The imprimatur of the U.S. House of Representatives, nor the ability to purchase a first class ticket afforded Mitchell the most privileged accommodations. The collective image of race represented Mitchell, the individual, just as he singularly represented the entire Black race. Despite the complicating factor of his representing the federal government itself, Mitchell, like his socially constructed race, was unambiguously assigned to the second class car, ergo, lower class space. A long tradition of Black protests focused on such treatment of women. During the late 19th century, that would be the 1800s, segregated railroad trains were emblematic of racial configurations of both class and gender. The first class railroad car, also called the ladies' car. Indeed, segregation's meaning for gender was exemplified in the trope of lady. Ladies were not merely women, they represented a class, a differentiated status within the generic category of women. Nor did society confer such status on all white women. White prostitutes, along with many working class white women, fell outside this rubric, but no Black woman, regardless of income, education, refinement, or character, enjoyed the status of lady. John R. Lynch, Black congressman from Mississippi during Reconstruction, denounced the practice of forcing Black women of means and refinement out of first class accommodations and into smoking cars. He characterized the latter accommodations as filthy with drunkards, gamblers, and criminals. Arguing in support of the Civil Rights Bill of 1875, Lynch used the trope of lady in calling attention to racist inscription upon class distinction.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll stop there, okay? Because y'all get the drift. Y'all get the drift. Higginbotham is telling y'all, playing into these Victorian ideals, femininity, is not going to save y'all because these femininity ideals were shaped to say Black women do not exist in as women or lady, even when you ascend class, either when you procure the wealth and the markers that you see white people benefiting from and being able to exist under certain labels and identity markers is constantly shapeshifted to exclude Black women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you seen the conflation of race and class employed in like the current structure, like social media?
So I think when it comes to race and class conflation, I have a tendency to think about it in the context of the way that as we were talking about earlier, like the discussion around relationships, and Black women, and that conversation of like Black women deserve luxury. And I also have the tendency to think about it in the spectrum of colorism and who actually within these spaces are representing like the ideal for what Black women will have the accessibility to measure up to. And hold on, I wrote it down. I have notes. Yeah. So the thing about these spaces is that I don't think that femininity in and of itself is the actual problem. It's the way that we're talking about femininity and the way that we're thinking about femininity from like the Eurocentric gaze of who's actually feminine, right? People that tend to have that Eurocentric feature, those features, those standards closer to whiteness are the ones that are granted that access to luxury, right? But you don't see it for most of the time. A lot of dark-skinned Black women, unless they're celebrities, and celebrities are a different conversation, I think, in this case. But I think that femininity as a construct for Black women in the way that we're working to define ourselves and the way that we're working to be radical subjects of our own of our own pernicion, it's in and of itself as much as resistance as not subscribing to femininity, right? Yeah.
No, I definitely agree. Like the way that if we think about this particular the class and saying like who gets to be the luxury, right? That a lot of how we define who is actually experiencing luxury and who gets to be the high value Black woman, the luxury Black woman, comes down to like material markers. But then there's always this conversation about quiet luxury. Your material markers are too loud. They're too abrasive. They're too it's always, and it's there's never, it doesn't seem like anybody can ever, any Black woman in particular can ever fit properly into the broad spectrum of the public just accepting her for who she said she is.
Yep.
And if I am a woman who lives a life of luxury, the discourse is so much quicker and louder around Black women than it is around the white counterparts who can kind of parade their whiteness as the identifying marker of the luxury they live within.
Yeah. I was looking at a video essay the other day, talking about the the trope of ghetto fabulous, and that's kind of what this started. Like, this is what this conversation has started like me thinking about, like how we think about those ideas of like high fashion and materialism on like a low budget, and how like for Black women it's considered ghetto, it's considered ratchet, right? But on white women it's trendy, right? It's what's the word for, there's another word for high fashion, I forget what it's called. Nope, it's not coming to me.
I don't know, high fashion.
Nope, it's not coming to me. But it's like in that realm where people are experiencing like the more abstract expressions of womanhood and and the ways that like other people present it versus the ways that Black women present it, and that can't be separated from the way that lower class Black women have to access it versus those that have the money and then also still access it, but also still get the criticism of accessing it.
Also, my thing is the word couture.
Couture, yeah, couture.
Okay, sorry, my brain is that. No, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think for this section, I put all the questions into that one header. Yeah, my next question is for sexuality.
I think there's another one.
Now, the next question is for 264, which is the sexuality section.
Yeah. Yep.
I did one question. I said, take it and think about it. We get into, yeah, that's sexuality. I mean, because it is a short in all of the essay. It is a short section because she does really make her argument around um lady. But yeah, the way we think about. Hmm, I do think it's very fascinating to take this text that was written in what 97. A lot of great academic work comes out in 97. Let me go back. Oh, did we take the title page out? No, 92. 1992. This is a very, very early piece
Yep, 92.
that has totally transformed the landscape of um, historical study of African American women. But how a piece in 92 applies to so much around the discourse that is happening in 2023, and people struggle, and I think it's because now it's so much easier for people to create identities and profit from those identities and say, hey, buy into this identity that I'm selling you on.
Yep.
And in engaging with people in building these large platforms and not understanding how sort of encourage people to buy into their messaging creates harm in our real lives. Like people log off the internet and interact with people in real lives. This sort of
Yes.
messaging then shapes the way that they see each other. I'm not opposed to sometimes people when I talk about subjects like around soft life and hypergamy
Mm-hmm.
and the sprinkle movement and all those things, people seem to think that I am saying that Black women should not reach for the comforts of life. And
Exactly.
that's not at all what I'm saying. I think we all deserve comfort. I think we all deserve like safety. And
Right.
I'm just not attached to this idea of like that our success should be attached to material things. Right? Because there is no way for me to like there's no way for all of us in mass to be financially millionaires, right? I
Right.
wish I wish I could sell y'all a program that would really guarantee that everyone who bought that program could become a millionaire. But anyone who's selling you a program like that, you're just making them a millionaire. Like that is what you're doing. Um, but I know that what I can do, because I don't control the way the economy goes, I'm not the government, right? But I do know that I can impact the way we think about safety and security and protection and having those conversations. It's not that you cannot desire a life of means, but the thing about a lot of the social media discourse around soft life, luxury, sprinkle, sprinkle, and all that is that a lot of it is just selling you on how to distinguish yourself from who?
The other.
Black women.
Black women.
How to create markers for you, the individual, that say, I'm different from her over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually about procuring in a guaranteed, in a stable, in a I've got it, I'm not going to lose it, it's going to be mine forever. Like they're not actually encouraging. It is much more centered around how you, in particular, as when especially when you're targeted at Black women, how you as a Black woman can distinguish yourself from other
Other
Black,
Black women. Yes. Yes.
and that's where
I
it works for me.
yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about a piece that we had read in my Black Womanist Writers class by Bell Hooks called I think it was Revolutionary Black Subjectivity, making ourselves subject. And she talks about the ways that Black women enact violence against other Black women from a place of self hatred, and that's kind of what the that's kind of what um, reminded me of what you were just talking about, of how we're using materialism to be the thing that distinguishes us from other Black women, right? And that could not in itself be a form of violence, but it is a form of harm against other Black women, because we're othering them, and we're seeing them as different instead of seeing them as a part of our community and people that also deserve to have that comfort, even if they don't have the material means to display that comfort, right?
I agree. Yeah, it does suck that you could get caught up in these movements and then because it's all built on shaming black women, you can't talk about, as you say, the discomfort. And that's across the board where we're not as black women allowed to talk about like these vulnerable moments of our lives where like we're not doing well without a
Mm-hmm.
broad shame being thrown at us.
Yeah. Yeah, the strong black woman trope, the perfect the perfect woman having
It
to
is,
do it all.
I get. What's interesting about the strong black woman trope is that a lot of like the soft life, the luxury, sprinkle, they're all working against that trope supposedly, but they
Hmm.
reinvest in that trope because they do not allow black women to just say, okay, I've attempted these things and it didn't work out for
Right.
me. And it's like, oh no, you did it wrong. You were not this perfect kind of being who should have had the wherewithal to duck and dodge and,
Hmm.
turn your emotions on, turn your emotions off, know when to, it's just because it's not a real politic either. It is about just saying whatever to keep people invested and be nasty to other black women, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I think we can end here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a short. Why am I tripping over my words? Short section. We have two more sections to go. Do we really have two more sections? Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Race is a double. That's going to be a long discussion. But next week it will be with Alyssa, and we will be doing the sexuality section, which is also a little bit longer. And then race as a double voice discourse will be our last one. That'll be a long one. That'll be a very long one. We'll have
Ooh,
to.
yeah.
I hope
I'm ready
y'all
though.
this reading really is easy, which is why our lives have been a lot shorter for this discussion as well. It is a worthwhile read. Pick up the syllabus. Look how pretty it is. You can get the PDF, downloadable one, or get the printed one sent to you. Oh yes, you printed yours out.
Yes, ma'am.
Did it on school paper and didn't waste your own ink.
I did do it on school paper, but I had to pay $15 for it
How
because
much?
capital $15.
$15. Girl, you could have just bought this.
I
This is
know. I was like, why did I spend all this money when I could have just bought it and got it shipped to me? Capitalism is winning right now.
oh man, $15. It is a lot of pages, but like fifteen
It is.
dollars.
I know. I know. The school is taking my money from me.
Where do you go to school at?
University of Arizona.
Oh my gosh, that's so expensive. I don't print anything at UNC, but I should find out how much they charge them to print paper.
It's because I got the double page. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I want to read.
Thank you for joining. We'll see y'all next week and have a